And we have research actually showing that the the blood-brain barrier opens when the child gets the MMR around 18 months, and that would then allow these infections, for example, the fungal infection that we find in children, into the brain. And so we in body ecology, we consider autism to be a gut and brain infection, an infection in the gut because of the lack of the beneficial bacteria, the good flora, and also an infection in the brain, and then that affects behavior.
Absolutely. And I call this condition gut and psychology syndrome, and that's what my book is about. Gut and psychology syndrome, or gap syndrome. These children fall in the gap. They fall in the gap in our medical knowledge. So this name is very appropriate for them. And autistic children are on the spectrum together with dyslexia, dyspraxia, with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, with depression, obsessive compulsive disorders, with OCD and bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. So all these conditions are joined together. They all have got the same cause: abnormal gut flora, leaky digestive tract, toxicity produced in the digestive tract, which gets into the brain and interferes with the normal functioning of the brain and normal development of the brain. Gut and psychology syndrome. Was that William Shaw from Great Plains Laboratories? Because he developed an organic acid test, William Shaw, because biochemists knew for decades that there are substances in the urine of people, all sorts of conditions, and healthy people as well, which are byproducts of activity of various microbes which live in the gut flora, which live in the gut. And they used to dismiss them, they used to not look at them. So he collected all that knowledge from decades of the urine analysis, put it all together, and collectively made this test. So he basically created the test. So indirectly he can tell you what kind of species might be living in the gut of the child, because they produce certain metabolites which show in the urine.
But you're sort of asking the question, why would some children born to a mother who obviously doesn't have healthy bacteria in her birth canal or in her gut, why would she give birth to a child that isn't autistic, and then some children become autistic? We really feel that the children that become autistic have a yeast or fungal infection in the blood, and these infections can be extreme or mild. If the child is able to develop a strong immune system, he can actually throw off the infection. And what you eat, or what, and on body ecology we use the term the inner ecosystem, and what we're trying to do literally from birth is to establish an inner ecosystem in the gut of every baby that's born. And this would prevent autism. Most of the children, every child I've ever worked with, has a history of colic early on. It's showing that early on they have gut dysbiosis. And what we do is we take the juice off of fermented vegetables, cultured vegetables. In Russia they call it sauerkraut. But these are, I don't like to use the term sauerkraut because, and I like to use the term fermented vegetables because sometimes in this country sauerkraut is something sitting in a jar that's pasteurized. We're talking about vegetables that have been fermented and they're just full of wonderful live bacteria, and we'll take the juice of those vegetables and actually put them right into the baby's mouth and begin to introduce this bacteria just hours after they're born. We also make a juice from a coconut, which we're going to be demonstrating tomorrow how to make, and we were just talking earlier that we're lucky here in America to have these Thai coconuts, these fresh Thai coconuts. We drain the juice out of these coconuts and we ferment that juice and make a wonderful beverage that all the children seem to be using. And the more they drink of it, the faster they start to get well. So we know for a fact that when we begin to put this bacteria in the gut, it begins to correct digestion. So now there are nutrient deficiencies. They're very starved for a lot of nutrients. They're deficient in proteins, they're deficient in minerals and fatty acids in particular. And they, even if you give them the healthiest foods but you haven't corrected their digestion, they're not going to benefit from those foods. So we start making sure that we correct digestion immediately. And then we also do everything we can to create energy. That means building the energy of the adrenals. We start giving them food that will give the adrenals more energy. The adrenals need lots of minerals, they need B vitamins, they need vitamin C, to be and some amino acids, and these fermented foods that we introduce actually begin to supply those nutrients to the adrenal. The energy goes up, then the child is also digesting better, and we're beginning to take those first really critical steps in conquering the infections. Like the children have fungal infections in the blood, in the gut, they've got them in the brain. These viruses and the fungus and the bacteria can actually penetrate the brain, and people seem to be missing this infection in the brain. We use the term epidemic. We say that autism is now an epidemic. Well, if it's an epidemic, you need to look to bacteria, fungus, viruses. But we don't see it being caught. Like you don't walk into a room and pick up autism because it's passed from mother to child when the mother's carrying the child.